reads American style. Good morning, Tara.
Good morning, Rebecca. How are you?
I'm good. Can I tell you what I woke up to?
Yes, go ahead.
Gunshots. Gunshots. And the only reason I kind of think that's what it was, I'm kind of confident, is I heard three sounds. I had like three things that sounded like gunshots, and it's not like it's 4th of July or something like that. And then two more shots after that. And then my Ring camera came on, and somebody in the neighborhood said, "Hey, those were gunshots." And this person said 9 millimeter. How do you know? I don't know. Maybe like gun experts know that, I guess. I don't know.
Well, I don't know.
But that's how I woke up this morning. How about you?
I did not wake up to gunshots, thank goodness. I just kind of woke up. Yeah. Oh, that's not a good way to start your day.
Yeah, it's a difference
Terrifying.
between the US and Canada. You
Yeah.
know, it is.
Crazy.
So, well,
Crazy.
we'll see. I didn't hear any sirens or anything, so maybe it wasn't that, but we'll see. I'm sure there'll be something. The neighborhood
Yeah.
app will kind of explode and people will start saying things. So we'll see.
Yeah.
Anyway, whatever.
Crazy.
Yeah.
I just got back. Well, my news is like much more not as
Normal.
loud,
Yeah.
normal.
Yeah.
I went at the end of last week to Point Pelee, to Kingsville and Point Pelee Island, like on in here in Ontario for the day, for an overnight, and had the best time. Oh my gosh, I know you've gone to Point Pelee, right? The national park,
Yeah,
you
but you
said,
did a
have you?
part that I'm jealous of, so you have to mention that part too. I don't know if you saw. Oh, I
Okay.
you posted it, and I said you did this one thing while you were there, which
Yep.
I think is so cool.
Yep. We went on this. So Point Pelee National Park is the southernmost tip of Canada. So it's here in Ontario. It's a birding mecca as well for like hardcore birders, spring, fall migration, but mostly spring, I think. So, anyways, myself, my mom, and my aunt, we went for an overnight thing, and we spent one day at Point Pelee, and we went on the boardwalk, which was amazing. Oh my God, it
Yeah,
was so it's a small park, like I think it was
yeah,
maybe 8 kilometers lengthwise from the entrance to like the tip. But it's like the most beautiful little park, and it has all these little trails. So we first place we went was the boardwalk that takes you out onto a sea of marsh grasses and cattails and stuff. It was stunning. And then we stopped along various ways. We took a shuttle bus, which was so we didn't realize this. We were on the map that we were given. It says that you can go to the tip, right? That there's like another little hiking trail that takes you right to the very point. So we just drove there. And but you once we got there, you reach a point where the road is actually blocked. Like you cannot physically take your car there. So we were like, oh, what's going on here? Well, then we went to the visitor center and found out all kinds of really cool information about the history of the park, uh, which I won't get into. You would love, and maybe you already know, but it was super cool. But
mm,
anyways, in 1971, they shut the access to the point down to vehicular traffic because it was a camping beach holiday destination. It was nature wise, it was becoming overrun by tourists. So the national or federal government stepped in and bought back. There were at that time like 300 private residences on this little
oh,
stretch of land. I know.
mm,
Orchards, because families had set up homesteads and stuff there,
mm.
variety stores, hotels. Anyways, the federal government popped in, bought back all the land, and made it into a federal park so that it could be renaturalized. So they also that
Wow.
included cutting off access, like vehicular access to the very point. So you had to take a shuttle bus, which was super fun. Who doesn't love it? This was the cutest little shuttle bus that popped up and then takes you to the beyond the this blockade so that you can then walk to the very point and look out onto Lake Erie. Oh my God, it was stunning. So pretty.
Okay. All right. Two things. One, I'll say this part first before I forget this part. When I went, it was during COVID and it was in the winter, so it was like December or January, I don't remember. And we there obviously the shuttle wasn't running at that time of year. So we parked at the center and then we walked all the way
Yes.
to the tip and everything. So we were able to do that. However, which was amazing. But here's the other thing. So did you see that big stand where you can climb up it? Did you see that thing?
Yes, but it was closed. They were doing some kind
Man.
of repairs on it at the time.
See, it was closed when I was there. So it's been like
Yeah.
4 years that like, come on, Canada, come on,
Yeah.
Ontario, get that together because I mean, I don't think I would have climbed it because I have a fear of heights and it was all see-through. Like if you're climbing up, you'd be
And it
able to
was
look down.
very tall, very tall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the view from there must be
Oh,
unbelievable.
yeah, I know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's very cool. Now, here's my other question for you. Now, when I went there, they have those signs everywhere that says, do not go into the water, you know, how dangerous it is. So
Yeah.
there was part of me that when you're standing there on that tip and you're looking around and you think to your, at least I did, I was thinking to myself, bad can it really be? Except that it is. It doesn't
Yeah.
look like it would be, but people die there. So did you have the same feeling how calm it seemed?
Not on the day that we were there because I think
Mhm.
we were, I didn't realize it at the time, but I think that is it Helene, the tropical storm that hit Florida and
Oh,
stuff? I
yeah,
think there was like it was starting to move up. So the actual it was really cool. So like here's the point, right, most of the and on one side, Lake Erie was like crazy. The waves were insane. The other side, it was actually because it was protected and was super quiet. So not on that day, like we could see just the lake, how rough it was itself without like an undercurrent kind of thing.
yeah,
However, I'm going to say yes to you that I could see why people want to go into it because it's just a stretch of beach along the whole, and it's
yeah.
beautiful. And I
Hmm.
even went onto the very tip to get a picture, and I was like, oh come on, like I could see the sandbar. I'm like, I could,
I
but I
know.
could walk out there. I'm like, come on. But on that day, I obviously wasn't because I was getting like splashed anyways just by where I was standing. But it would be, I can see why people are tempted.
Yeah, that's how I think. Even though there are signs posted everywhere telling you people
Yeah.
die and everything, but it's very deceptive, which is part of, I think it's kind of its lore, right? You
Yeah.
look at it and you go, doesn't look that bad,
No.
but
Yeah.
it
It's
is.
beautiful. Yeah.
That's so cool. I'm so excited that you went, but now it makes
I
me want to
know.
go because I didn't do the boardwalk when we were there, and I really want to do the boardwalk. So,
Yeah.
oh,
I
that's
have
cool.
plans to go back in the spring. Like I loved it so much. I'm like, now my husband has to go back with me because it
Yeah,
was so much
yeah.
fun. Yeah.
That's so cool. Well, excellent. What a wonderful day. What a
Oh,
wonderful, wonderful time you had.
awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah. It was awesome. Well, should we get back to the books, like to the reason why we're here?
sure.
Because it is our monthly episode of reading from our shelves where we highlight the books that we've read that came directly from our shelves in our attempt to whittle down our TBR piles. Rebecca's
Yes.
much better than I am, but
Mm, we'll see.
we'll
But
see.
I'm going to start with what I'm currently reading because
Yes,
I did
do
finish
that.
something late last night. I was up really late, so I wanted to finish this book. And I want to show you what I'm reading currently. So this is a library book, and it was recommended. Excuse me, I've got a frog this morning. Anyway, it was recommended by our friend Jen Book Fiend on Instagram. She just read it, and it's only 100 pages. So I was like, sounds like a nice little palate cleanser in between all the things I've been trying to get read. And it's called Great Granny Webster by Carolyn Blackwood. And it's basically about this young girl. It's in England, and I can't even remember the time frame of it, but it's back in the, back in the day. And so it's like kind of a gothic story. But this girl, she needs to take the fresh air. So her great Granny Webster, this old lady in the family, has this crumbling kind of mansion kind of thing. And she goes there. She allows her to come, and she's basically going to spend this period of time with her. But it's really Granny does not suffer fools, boy. Let me tell you, she is a tough old lady, and the young girl, she is just kind of like the only time she gets to take the fresh air is every day they go for a ride in this car and the window's cracked. So anyway, it's really kind of crazy and fun. And 100 pages, I'll get this knocked out in no time. But I just thought it was just this weird little story that Jen talked about, which I thought sounded
Yeah.
kind of fun. So that's what I'm currently reading. How about you?
Okay. Well, I am currently reading, I just started this morning, Knife by Salman Rushdie. So
Oh,
his like
so
new
excited.
memoir about, yes, yeah. Uh, it's also very not super long, like about 200 pages, but his memoir about the attack on him 2 years ago, 2022, when he was, which I didn't realize at the time, he was there for a talk about how to keep writers safe. And
I didn't know that.
I didn't know that either. It was the name of the group. I can't remember now, but yeah, the purpose that they were had joined that he was there for was a discussion about how to keep writers safe in a world of book banning and all of this. And he was attacked within minutes of the it starting, the meeting starting. It was, yeah,
Yeah, I heard an interview with him talking about the book, and I was curious about the book when I first heard about it, and then when I heard him speak about it, I definitely want to read it. So, how far into it are you? Have you started it yet, or
yes, I'm like 40 pages in, so I just
okay?
started this morning. It's a pretty quick read, actually.
Yeah,
So the first chapter was about the actual attack. So
yeah,
his thoughts on it, his impressions as it was happening. It's fascinating. And then the second chapter so far is about his wife, Eliza, and who I did not realize, I ended up Googling, he's been married a lot.
yeah,
He he has had a lot of romantic relationships, but he said that she is the love of his life and how they met. And I think now it's getting into the part where how their relationship handles this attack and stuff.
yeah,
So it's very good. Yeah.
yeah. And I just now remembered when you're saying that, I remember now kind of how it ends. Of course, I won't give any spoilers or anything, but how the end of the book, what happens and stuff, which is fascinating. So, yeah, I really, really look forward to your overall review because that
Yeah.
is one that is on my list. Yeah. Oh, I'm so excited. I didn't know
Yeah.
you were reading
Yeah.
that.
Yes, I
Now, is
just
that you
picked,
bought that, right?
no, I got picked this up from the library
Oh,
just
okay.
yesterday, I think. So that's why I started it today. I think I put the hold on it. It came out in April. I put the hold on it months ago and I just got it
Did
yesterday. So
you have you read any of his other books? Because I haven't.
only the what he calls that book, the one that had that he was
I can't
uh
think of I can't think what it's called. Oh my
the
gosh.
satanic verses.
There we
The
go. Yeah,
satanic
I
verses. I think I read
remember.
that. And I may have read Midnight's Children as well. So I've only read like two of his books, and I think he's written 20 plus. So,
Yeah.
and he does talk about his writing quite a bit, actually, which is, um, I like the little insights into his writing. He's talking about one point, he talked about a short story that he hasn't written, but he's like, it's up here in my head.
Oh,
And then he talked about the short story, but then he's like, but that's as far as I've gone. I don't know if it'll happen anymore.
yeah.
It's kind of fun to see the um, inside the writing mind as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Good choice.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. You want to start off with what you've read?
Excuse me. I am so sorry I have a frog in my throat. So I'm probably going to be
Okay.
coughing all morning at you. I apologize to everybody up front on that. Yes. First, I want to mention that we just launched our um podcast sort of book club. It started from people who listen to the podcast. So if you're interested in what we're doing with our book club, and it's completely free, we do it on Zoom. It's completely free, but we are going to do it. We just had one yesterday. We're going to do our next one in January. So it's not going to be like a monthly thing. We're just going to kind of do it when we do it.
Okay.
And it's through Zoom. we we're kind of doing a US author and then a Canadian author. So I kicked it off yesterday with the book Fire Exit by Morgan Talty. And this book, it was on my to be read list. So that what we did is I think I put out like three titles to the group and said, let's vote. And everybody voted for this one. And I really enjoyed it. And you had already read it in advance, so you were ahead of the game.
I had to
But
check it.
yeah, basically it's about a man, gosh, excuse me, a man who fathers a daughter with a woman who is indigenous, and he was raised, his stepfather was indigenous and he lived on the reservation, but during a certain period of time when they made the changes, he was no longer able to live on the reservation. But his daughter is being raised by the mother with who married an indigenous man. So the family, that nuclear family, is now an indigenous family. But he wants to tell her the truth of her origins. And she's in her 20s now. And that's kind of the story. It really opened up a really interesting discussion yesterday. I thought it was everybody did such a super job talking about the book, and I really liked it. I think I gave it 4 stars, but I really liked it because it's one of those books that makes you think about a lot of different things. And that's, I think, what the strength of it was. There were some issues I had with it a little bit, but nothing major. But I just thought the book club was really fun. So if you're interested in more information about our book club, just, go ahead and put a comment in the comment section, and then I'll get together with you if you're interested in joining us. But the next one we'll do is in January. And Tara gets to pick the book, a Canadian author.
I have no idea what it's going to be yet, but
Yeah.
we'll see.
Yeah.
Okay. So my first book is Rage the Night by Donna Morrissey, a Newfoundland writer. This had been on my shelf for about a year because I think it came out last fall or last summer. Anyway, so I finally got around to it, and I'm so glad I did. I've read all of her books. She's a favorite.
Rage Tonight. Ooh.
Rage the Night. And it is about essentially, I mean, there is a character-driven story, and that the main character, his name is Rowan, and it's his journey to find his biological father, because on the deathbed of the man who was raising him, he finds out a secret about his biological father. So he journeys. This is in Newfoundland in 1914, I believe.
Ooh.
He journeys to find his biological father, and he ends up on the ship, the Newfoundland, which is a sealing ship. And this part of the story is based on a true story in that the sealing ship, the Newfoundland had a sealing ship disaster. These men were all not abandoned, but well, actually, they were kind of abandoned by the ship's captains on the ice during a sealing expedition in the middle of a storm. So it's there. That was my favorite part of the story. Actually, I really enjoyed the first part as well. But for me, it was when she got into that and you felt like you were on the ice with these men. That was my favorite part of the story. Although it was, it's a tragedy what happened to these men and how they were abused by the system of, the more seal pelts you get, the better you are, kind of thing. Well, if you're the captain. So
Yeah.
it's yeah, but I really enjoyed it. And I remember being taught this in elementary school. So because I'm from Newfoundland. So we were actually taught a lot of Newfoundland history. And I remember being taught this story and having to read the book, the nonfiction book that was all about this disaster, which I think was called On the Ice. I shouldn't say that. I will get it and we'll put it in the notes, kind of thing. But so it was really nice. Not nice. It was, I enjoyed getting back to it. I just enjoy a book about Newfoundland anyways, but
Yeah.
any book that highlights Newfoundland history, I enjoy.
So my mother's father, my grandfather, who I never met, he passed when my mom was a teenager. The family story is that he was on a boat. He was a captain of a boat, and I don't know, it was sinking or something, and he was the first one off the boat, which is not how it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's really true. It's like family lore. Who knows if it's true?
Yeah.
But we all wouldn't be here if my grandfather had followed the proper
Yeah.
rules. None of us would be here.
Yeah.
Anyway. But yeah, that's just tragic. So but I just want to go back for a second too and mention, I meant to do this right up front, that Trish Talks Books, who is a friend of ours, of the podcast, a friend of the podcast, and she does a September, uh, now I can't think of the hashtag.
Oh,
Read,
it's TBR challenge or something?
yeah, read your TBR or something. It's a TBR challenge for September. So I joined it to really because pushed me to get the rest of my books read this year. But I have to laugh. I did include Fire Exit in my TBR list because guess what I did? I was eating my lunch and I made a mess on the page. Can you see what
Oh,
I did? So now I technically own this book because I will take it back to the library tomorrow and tell them I'd like to pay for this book. And if I pay it, if I bought it, I'm keeping it. So yeah, I couldn't believe it. I was sitting there really careful because I was eating something like Mexican kind of food, spicy food. And I was like, be really careful. And then immediately after I had that thought, I splashed a bunch of salsa stuff on it. So I own it now. But anyway, so this is just a shout out to Trish, and I'll put her information on the show notes as well for doing that challenge every year because it really does help you focus on your TBR. Because the rules are kind of like you're not supposed to read library books, you're not supposed to buy anything, you're not supposed to take anything from a little free library. Obviously, the rules are flexible, but I
yeah,
love that she does this every year, so I really enjoyed that. So
yeah.
anyway, all right, is it my turn now? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so I did talk about this book. So this was a TBR, the one I read this year for September, and it's Outsider, an Old Man, a Mountain, and the Search for a Hidden Past by Brett Popplewell. And this was a book that I picked up at Eden Mills last year, so it's a year later. I had to get it read. It's the best book that I've read so far this year, and I really don't think anything will top it. I loved it that much. I won't say a lot about it because I'm a little bit behind on getting podcast edited. So I've already talked about it at length. Um, and that podcast should drop today, tomorrow, the next day or two, and you'll have more information about that. So we're gonna push you over to that. And also, I was able to interview Brett Popplewell, the author, and I also have that podcast that will drop probably sometime in mid-October. But it's basically about an old man who is an extreme marathoner and he was an extreme skier. He was kind of almost one of the first extreme skiers in the world, which is pretty amazing. And he was an actor, like in Goldfinger or something. He was like a character in Goldfinger. And he lives in an abandoned school bus in the middle of BC and the mountains and the forests and stuff and lives this really isolated life. But it's his background, his family history. Brett meets him and says, "Is there one thing in the world you could have? What would you want?" Thinking there would be a material thing he would really want because he's living with no heat, no water. I mean, he's living very, very rough. And he says he would like a picture of his mother. And I won't go into it a lot of detail, but Brett takes on the challenge of helping him find out who his birth parents are. He was raised by a Norwegian couple, and it is an absolutely fascinating story. Reading this book, and the man's name is Dag Obi. Reading Dag's story through Brett's amazing storytelling was incredible, and he has changed my perspective on aging.
Mm.
Not fully changed, but I mean I think he's so Daig's philosophy is very empowering, and I really thought I was going to be reading a book about somebody who had mental health issues and was his family had abandoned him. It is not that story at all. Daig's story is amazing, and Brett tells it so beautifully. Just like I said, best book I've read so far this year.
Wow. Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm following up Rebecca's best book with Tom Lake by Ann Patchett. Again, I think this has been on my shelf. A friend had lent this to me, so it had been on my shelf probably close to a year as well, a long time. Um, I've only read one other Ann Patchett, I believe.
Oh,
It's a quiet book. She reminded me writing style of Mary Lawson, one of her favorites. And it takes place in the middle of the pandemic, but it's not overtly pandemic. It's just mostly that this woman and her husband live on a cherry farm in Michigan, and it's middle of the pandemic, and their three adult daughters have come home to spend that time with them to help them harvest the cherries. Because of the pandemic, they have less farmer workers on the farm, so they need help harvesting. So while they're harvesting the cherries, she tells her daughters the story of her time as a young actress
Mhm.
at Palm Lake, which is this little town that has a acting festival, and how she acted with and was had a relationship with a fellow actor who ended up being a huge Hollywood movie star. So it's like, and it's very quiet. Like I said, the story just rolls out. You get the development, the relationship of all this family together, their interactions. I loved it. She is fantastic at being revealing these like key moments in the story, but
Mhm.
so like not subtly, because when they're revealed, you're like, oh shit. But like you're not expecting it. Like all of a sudden she's like, she will reveal, I don't want to say anything because I don't want to spoil that
Yeah.
moment for anyone, but like how two characters meet. She reveals that, and you're like, I didn't realize that I wanted to know that until this very moment. Like it's just,
Oh,
yeah. And it is also about what a mother tells her daughters and what a mother keeps from her daughters, as part of her story too. So I love this book. I'm not
yeah.
going to say
It's so
it's like my favorite book of the year like you did with Outsider, but I really, really enjoyed it.
It's funny because my mom, her friends give her reading recommendations all the time. And then she said, "Oh, my friends want you to read this book." And I'm so, okay. So I don't, so my mom's not more, she doesn't read like quiet books. She reads more like mysteries, cozy mysteries and light romances. But her friends have told her to tell me that I should read that book. So
Yeah.
I definitely want to read that. So
Yeah. I think you
excellent.
would like it, except, well, because I couldn't stop thinking about you because it's set in Michigan as well. So
Yeah.
I was like, oh, I
Yeah.
feel like Rebecca would really like this, even though it's like Michigan in the summertime. I'm like, I still think you would, because you like cold places,
Yeah.
cold times, but
And we're all about the cherries here in Michigan,
all
Traverse
good. I
City, that
didn't
whole
realize it.
area. Yep, it's cherry salsa, cherry everything. So, in fact, I have cherry jam in my refrigerator as we speak.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I
yeah,
think you have to read the book.
we're all about cherries here. Okay, this book is also, again, this was on my TBR for September. So, thank you again to Trish because this really pushed me to finally get this book read.
Yep.
I swear I'm not going to say that much about it because I've talked about it so many times this year. You're all sick of it. Yes, I read Driving the Green Book, and I think not sure if I already talked about it or if it's coming on the next that podcast that I'm behind on. I will just say this. Oh yeah, it's one that we talked about. That's not up yet, but it will be soon. The key thing I just want to mention about this book is that it turns out this the Green Book was a book that African Americans would use back from the 1937 to 36 or whatever to 67. And if they were going to be doing a road trip, this would identify Black-owned businesses, hotels, restaurants, etc., where they could stay, because obviously it was not safe for them to be on the road going from like Detroit to Louisiana. Just wasn't safe for them going through all those states. And the key thing that I got my takeaway from it, which will connect to something else I'll talk about, is that when I you can look at Green Books on the New York Public Library's website. They have the actual digitized copies of it. So I was looking at it. And then in 1940, they started uh, allowing people who had guest homes. So it's kind of like an Airbnb, but I think it was free. I'm not really sure. So there were three people in Flint that opened their homes to travelers, which I thought was just amazing. I love that. So I did a little research and looked up who these people were and all this information that just was like a rabbit hole for me. And I had so much fun going to my public library and looking all that information up. That's all I'm going to say about it because I talk about it probably way too much on the podcast. So if you're interested, you can go and listen to more of that there. The bottom line is I thought the topic was fascinating. I wasn't that keen on the style in which it was written. So if you're fascinated by the subject, read it. You'll still get a lot out of it. but a lot of people in the Goodreads comments were kind of saying like, yeah, it wasn't quite the compelling nonfiction we were hoping for. But again, subject wise, absolutely fascinating. I'm glad I read it.
Interesting. Okay, I have a nonfiction book as well. It is Coming Into Being, Mothers on Finding and Realizing Feminism. It's an essay collection edited by Andrea O'Reilly, Fiona Joy Green, and Victoria Bailey. So this came into my hands via Hallé of River
Oh,
Street Rights. I have to admit, so yes, I was like, when she first offered it, I was like, gangbusters. I'm like, yes, that sounds really great. And then once I got it, I was like, I don't know if I want to read about motherhood, which is so stupid because I'm like, but I think I was afraid that it was going to be just, essays about just what we see on social media about motherhood and stuff like, I don't know what I was expecting that. But I jumped into it anyways, and I actually end up really enjoying it because it's motherhood and feminism. So it was a diverse collection of female writers talking about their experience becoming a mother, whether some of them were artists, scholars, professors, how it affected their art, their sense of self, their job, even just like getting to and from work. It was yeah, I just really enjoyed it and was much more accessible than I thought it would be. Because sometimes like scholarly essays can be a little not quite as accessible, but this was quite enjoyable and made me, it opened up different points of view to me that I
yeah.
hadn't taken into consideration before.
Hmm. It's
Yeah.
funny that you should kind of say that because I kind of feel the same way when books are couched in terms of, oh, it's about motherhood or whatever. I kind of steer clear of them for the most part because one, I never had children. I had stepkids that were teenagers and everything, but I never had children. And so that whole experience is something that is just not necessarily top of my list to read about. But I will admit that I do think all these like influencers kind of stuff with the, motherhood, they make it look like it's perfect in a way. And so that's why, and I don't think that it is. I mean, I had stepkids, so teenagers, so kind of know it isn't always perfect. So I do kind of steer clear of that. But this one sounds like it's a
Ah,
wide perspective of different
mhm.
experience, right?
Yeah, more than
Yeah.
what we see. Like even I opened up to this essay, and it's a conversation. A mother and daughter discuss feminism. So it's the author and
Hmm.
her daughter, who I think is 16, and the author is also an artist. So it is literally at times the conversation they had, like it's the transcript of their conversation, and then also interspersed with the artist's work, that's not everyone is like this, but it's just that's what I mean. They're all a little different than what I
Yeah.
was expecting at times. Yeah.
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 And I should say it's a little triggering for me now in the U.S. just because of the way what's going on with women and J.D. Vance and the childless cat women and stuff. So that's why I think it's a little triggering for me. Not to say but that book actually sounds really interesting because I like
Yeah.
the idea of diverse voices about
Yes.
the subject, especially
Yeah.
feminism, motherhood. I like that.
Yeah. And I should add that I think when I first picked it up too, I was afraid it was just going to be the cis white motherhood that's going to be addressed. And right away in the introduction, they put that aside. They were like, it's all women. Like, like
Excellent.
trans, non-binary mothers are all going to be, presented in this book. So I was like, okay, now I'm on board. Like I'm not getting just that one,
Point of view.
uh, yeah, point of view. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's okay. That does sound really, really interesting. So, okay. So again, thank you, Trish. Another one off my TBR.
Yeah. Let's see. Oh,
Try Not to Be Strange. The Kingdom of Redonda by Michael Hingston. And again, I picked this up last year at Eden Mills. And when I started to read it, I said to Tara, I don't even know what the quote was. I said something like, I wanted it to be bigger print and less pages, I think
yeah.
is what I said to you,
Yeah.
because it started out slow for me. And in the beginning, I was kind of like, I don't know if I'm going to keep reading this or not. I am so thankful I stuck with it. I love this book. It was 5 stars for me. It's in my top books I've read this year. It was wild. And here's why I'm bringing it to our reading from our shelves. So, as with the driving the green book, I went down a rabbit hole, started doing all this research at the library, found all this cool information about these people that opened their homes. What Michael Hingston did was he was reading a book by a Spanish author, and the guy mentions, like, it's fiction, but he's mentioning Redonda, this island that's in the Caribbean, and he's mentioning real people. So he's like, wait a minute here. How are you mixing fiction and nonfiction? This is kind of weird, right? So he starts to go down a rabbit hole, and this man spent 10 years going through rabbit holes, and the commitment he makes to this process. I said, I am Michael Hingston. If I had talent and could write, I am totally Michael Hingston. I love everything about this book. It really is about this island in the middle of nowhere, very small. It's like a big rock. It's really hard to actually get onto this rock island. But it's about a guy over 100 years ago who his father took him there and crowned him the king of Redonda. And then ever since then, people have been handed the kingship, and they can create uh, other people in the court. And Dylan Thomas was one. I know I'm going to forget all the famous names, but anyway, they became part of the kingdom. It was all fake. It was all just kind of a lark and fun, but there's a literary piece to it, and that is what the first half of probably the first 2/3 of the book is really about, this literary background and who these people were that were the kings. And and part of the job when you became the king was to make sure that you kept the names and the works alive of the people who were the predecessors of your own kingship. And then there was this whole thing where some of the kings, there was succession issues, and some people claim, many people claimed to be the king that maybe weren't the king, and maybe they were. I don't know. It was hilarious. By the end of the book, there were parts where I was literally laughing out loud, and the very end of the book was the most perfect ending to a saga that was just crazy. So if you like, I think this would be a book. Um, I could see like a lot of older men really liking this book.
Mhm.
It just feels that way because it's just such a weird, crazy ride, and all of these kings were old white men. Well, became
Yeah.
old white men, right? But anyway, I don't want that to turn anybody off. But it was an amazing 10-year journey, and the lengths he goes to tell this story. Kudos, man. I'm just so impressed with Michael Hingston and his ability to go down a rabbit hole.
Nice.
I
Nice.
loved
I love
it.
that line. Good line. Good line. Okay, I have a 5 star a nonfiction. So, Field Notes from an Unintentional Birder by Julia Zarankin. And Julia she was, I can't remember what her field of expertise was, but she was a professor and then left that profession when she realized she wasn't happy. She does become an unintentional birder, and it is her story of becoming a huge birding geek. And she's self-professed. She gets the hat, the vest, and all of her. So it's wonderful. Each essay is about her birding life, but also about her life. And that is my favorite type of memoir. Is a birding memoir, which is very niche, but I love them. They're fantastic, and it is funny. It's touching. It's beautiful. It's a great book. I loved this book. It lived up to all my expectations of it.
Excellent. And that was one you just picked up off of a shelf, or did you
Yeah,
read about it in advance? Okay.
it was published in 2021, so I think I'd heard about it then, but I could never find it in a bookstore. Like when I would go to a bookstore and just look around, it was never there. So it was always on my list to read, but I had just never seen it. And then over the summer when we were camping up on Georgian Bay, somewhere in Midland. I picked it up at the little bookstore there. I happened to go into a little independent bookstore and there it was. And I'm like, I've been wanting to read this for like 3 years.
Yeah.
And I read it quickly. It was awesome.
Excellent. Very, very cool.
Yeah.
So I'm bringing the last three books I want to mention are books that I have had on my shelf for so long. They're series books that I've just
Oh,
kind of forgotten they're sitting there. So I thought, oh my gosh, I've got to bring them. I've got to bring them to our YouTube channel so I can talk about it and remind myself to get reading on these. So I am reading Chronicles of Narnia. So I read the first one, but then I just never read the others. And what's really fascinating about the series, which probably everybody in the world knew but me, because again, I hadn't read it, is that there are two ways you can read the series. You can either read it in the way that it was published, that C.S. Lewis published it, or there's this other vocal part of the community that says, no, you have to read it in the order in which the story is being told, which means you would not read the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe first. Apparently, you would not read that one first. And I'm just like, oh, that is just too much for my brain to absorb. I can't. So I'm just going to read it in the order that it was published. So I read the first one, but Prince Caspian would be the second one. So I will be reading that one. Those are going to be definitely in 2025. I want to get more of these knocked out
yeah.
because I'm sitting here at the beginning of these series. And I think this one I think there are 7 books in this series. I've only read one, so I need to get moving on that.
Nice. Nice. Yeah, I remember. I think I started reading that series as well years ago. And the same thing. Because my brother-in-law, he and I he's the one who told me about the discussion whether or not you read it like chronologically how it was published or chronologically how it's meant to be read. And
Yeah,
so I cannot remember how I decided to do it. And then
yeah,
I just got flustered by it and went, forget it. And so I think I got three books in or something like that. So
yeah.
yeah. Okay. My last one, well, aside from my adding to my bookshelf books, is a book that we buddy read together last month, or this month, sorry, in September. And it is The Circle by Katerina Vermette. We both bought our copies last year at Eden Mills, right?
Mhm.
So it was sitting on our shelves for a year. And we finally went, let's read it. And I really enjoyed it. I thought we had slightly different opinions, not really, but slightly different.
Slightly.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. And I thought it was a great way to uh, end this trilogy, which is not really a trilogy, but it kind of is. I don't think I don't know if it's officially a trilogy or not. It's
Yeah.
weird when I started looking into it, right? But it's the final companion in The Break and The Strangers. So it's writing style slightly different from the first two,
Yeah.
right? A lot of multiple POVs. So if that's not your thing, then you might want to stay away from it. But I really enjoyed it. Yeah.
Yeah. I also think if you're 2 books in, you absolutely should read it. I don't regret that I read it and I didn't dislike it. I just had some minor issues with it. And so I think it's definitely if you've read the first 2, read the third one.
I think
Yeah.
so, right? You may as
Yeah.
well. And her writing style is, even though it's just a regular size, like probably about 300 pages. So it's not a short book, but it's not a super long book. But I find her writing just kind of flows and you just flip through the pages. It's really weird for a literary book, which often are slower reads.
Mhm.
I find her writing style makes it very quick. They're quick reads at the same
I'm
time.
going to use the word propulsive because she keeps you moving forward. Like you want
Yeah.
to keep moving forward. There's never a point at which you go, I'm going to set this book aside. I really don't.
Yeah.
I'm like a little bored or I'm losing my way. She keeps you moving forward in the story. And I do
Yeah.
appreciate that about her writing. And you just read her other new book.
Yeah.
And you said the writing style was similar to the third book in this one, right?
Yes. Yeah. That's good. Yeah, that is interesting because you're right. It is propulsive, but without often when you think of like propulsive books, you think of plot-driven books, but
Hmm.
hers are still more character-driven,
Yeah.
but still interesting. Yeah. How does
Yeah.
she do that? That's interesting. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So the next one there are, I think 22 books in the series, and this would be book three for me. Um, my Redwall
Oh,
series. So Mattimeo is the next one. And the thing about Redwall, when I was a children's librarian, that's when I first came across the Redwall series. And my nephew, Justin, who lives in Kansas, he, as a kid, Brian Jacques was his favorite author, and he got to meet him in Omaha, Nebraska, and get a bunch of his books signed by him. And so I'll be seeing my nephew in a few weeks, and I want to see. I'm hoping he can just show me. I just want to see it because I really regret that I never got to meet Brian Jacques. Because the thing about the Redwall series, I mean, it's really a series that young readers read. But the thing I love about it is that complete world building, Redwall, the Abbey, everything about this society of animals and their warrior mice and I mean a lot of different animals. Like some of them I had to look up because I didn't know what a vole was. So you know what I mean? So I had to look certain things up. But it is all about honor and I have courage and all those things that are really amazing. And one thing I will say about the Redwall series, which I think is kind of fascinating, is that as a children's librarian, we would often discover that a lot of our books were long overdue. People never returned them. They were never coming back. So we'd have to buy new copies of them. And I mean, this was always about they're like everything. Any popular kids book, I guarantee you they don't come back and you had to rebuy, new copies. Redwall, when I was doing all my, collection management, I discovered that Redwall was the one series that just came back all the time. And I always sort of said, I think it's because the children who read this, they have this obligation to what's right. And, they know right from wrong. I mean, seriously, like, I really thought that because it was so unusual that a series of 22 books would just be something that continues to come back and that we didn't have to rebuy for that reason. We would have to do it for condition, but not because it didn't come back. So I just think readers are like the best library patrons in the world. Shout out to all of you. And I'm looking forward to getting through the series. And they're not wildly different from book to book, but I'm just committed to reading the entire series because it just has so much meaning to me. And the stories are rollicking, great stories. So if you're out there and you have young readers, boys and girls, they'll love it. But it was like a boy book kind of thing back when I was a children's librarian. In fact, I had a mother one time say, could you please recommend something else? She goes, I'm so tired of him just rereading the Redwall series over and over again. And so, yeah, because the readers who love it are passionate about it.
very cool. Okay, so all of my books up till this point have been books that I've taken off my shelf, and now I'm going to share books that I'm adding to my shelf. And
Okay.
all three of these I purchased at Eden Mills just a few weeks ago when we went. And the first is by the lovely Holly Gaudry, and her latest book, Widow Fantasies, published at the beginning of September, a collection of short fiction, which is biting, funny, and also very touching. And we did an interview with Holly, which you can, we published that at the beginning of September. Highly recommend it. Plus, look how beautiful that
Yeah.
cover is. So I'm adding it to my shelf, but I've actually already read it because we got the digital art. But I loved it so much, and I wanted this cover. So
You got it signed,
and
right?
I got it signed.
Yeah, I missed
So
out on that.
there we go. I know you got caught up in
Oh,
the Eden Mills moment.
I did. Yeah,
Yeah.
because I bought a copy as well, but I just completely spaced on getting Holly to sign it. But someday I hope to meet her in person and I could have her sign it then. So yeah. Okay, my last book. You're gonna love this one.
Okay.
The smile on your face when you see this, you're gonna be very happy. Are you ready?
Yep, I'm ready.
Again, I have a series. I'm now on about book three of Anne of Green
Oh
Gables, which
yeah.
I've never read.
I
And
love that
so,
cover too. It's
yeah,
beautiful.
the series is really beautiful. I think I got it on like what is that book outlet or something.com. I
Yeah.
can't remember. But anyway, it's a box series and stuff, and they're really beautiful. And anyway, so I am reading book three. And the thing about reading Anne of Green Gables, which sure everybody who's listening, you've all read it, but I'm slow to the game here on this. But it just makes me happy. When you live in Anne's world, the whole time you're reading it, you just feel really happy. That's how I feel anyway. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I know. I've had over the last several months the itch to like jump back into an Anne book, and I haven't been able to fit it in yet, but it's going to happen soon because every couple of years I'm just like I just got to read a book. I got to read it. I want to be
yeah,
back there. It's
yeah.
happening now. Yeah,
I
yeah.
love it. I love it.
Okay, here's the second book that I purchased, Tear by Erica McKean. I got that at Eden Mills as well. The publisher, Invisible Publishing. So I went up to, they had a table at Eden Mills, and I went to the table and looked, and the woman, we were going through several books, and she's like, "Oh, if you like terrifying books, there's this one." And I'm like, "Yeah, sign me up." And I didn't even know what it's about. So I grabbed this one. I'm really looking forward to reading this book. I think this is her debut novel, and she lives currently in Vancouver. So that's,
But
yeah.
let me ask you, is it tear or tear?
I don't know.
Because
I,
either way, both words could
yes,
be,
I know. Because tear makes me think of it because you're seeing the face and where you can't see her eyes. So it makes me think tear.
yeah,
And also
but
Terror would be
tear.
a really good book for a horror, or sorry, a
Yeah,
really good name for a horror book.
yeah,
And it is about that she's a this the main character, Frances, is on the brink of graduating from university. She lives in a basement apartment and she starts hearing this tapping on the wall and she can't get out of the apartment. So you can also, oh, and then
like
it's
tear,
the last
like
line.
tear her. Oh,
Yes, threatening to break through her bedroom wall. So it could be
oh,
tear as well.
tear.
I don't know, but I will let you know because I'll be reading that
And maybe
shortly.
that is the point that it could be like the author picked that or they picked that title because
Yes,
it could be
ambiguous.
either
Yeah,
way.
yeah,
Ugh.
I know,
Yeah,
I know.
I won't be reading that one, but yeah.
Yeah, so,
Because that is one of my biggest fears, honestly, is like
yeah,
you're in your house and something's trying to get in or whatever,
yeah,
like
and you can't get out.
and you can't get out.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. That's one
Here
of
I
my
am
big
shaking
ones.
my head, but I'm like, but I bought the book.
I can't wait till you read it. Yeah.
Yeah, me too. Me too. You have
I
anything
don't have
else?
nope, I don't have anything else. Nope.
Okay. Then I have one more book that I purchased at Eden Mills. So this is God Isn't Here Today by Francine Cunningham, a collection of short stories, which I'd actually heard Francine speak, not this Eden Mills, but the previous Eden Mills, so just over a year ago. She read from this book at that point. I didn't pick it up then, but it had been on my radar. Again, this was from Invisible Publishing, so I had a good time at their booth, their table. Um, and she had read when I'd seen her to Eden Mills ago from the story. Excuse my language if, but it's the title of the story, so I'm not using really cursing here. Come and get your ice cream, motherfuckers, was the name of the story that she read, and it was great, and I loved her, so I had to pick this up when I saw it.
Yeah.
That's it.
I know because when you read that one, especially, I want to know. I think I want to read that short story just for the title alone is
Yeah.
pretty funny. But so you know what's really interesting is don't you think over the course of whatever number of years that you just really embrace short stories?
Yeah.
Yeah, like that wasn't something you normally would have picked up, would you?
Mm-mm.
Or even like collections of essays, or would you? Did you read essays but not necessarily short stories?
Nope. I
Yeah,
don't think I would not have said that I've read essays at all up like 5 years ago, not at all. So,
yeah,
and short stories, the same thing. I'd read a scatter one, but I would never have read a whole book of short stories, you
yeah,
know? But now I've tried to work them like I want to read them. And now I still get waylaid by the fiction, like a novel because it's just, I love jumping into a book, but
yeah,
I've tried to make short stories a regular part of my reading every week.
yeah,
Like I've worked it into my reading schedule, not to sound like
yeah,
all anal about it, but yeah, because I want
yeah.
to. I have a collection that I want to get through. So yeah,
Excellent. Yeah.
yeah,
All right.
that's it.
Well,
I think we're
I
done.
think that's it. Yeah. So just so everybody knows, we've got, like I said, I'm backed up on editing, but I'm going to be putting out a bunch of things like really quickly because I'm leaving October 6th, I'm leaving for my road trip and I'll be gone for a few weeks. So some things might come out. At least one thing will come out while I'm on the road, but a bunch of stuff is going to come out because I got to get it done so that it's not too outdated. And then we'll be back with some more great stuff in end of October and November.
Yeah. And while Rebecca's on the road, I will just be here reading.
I know. I was thinking like all these. That's I didn't like connect the dots on that, but it's like that's like 2 weeks of probably I'll be exhausted by the end of the night, and I don't even know how much I'll be
Yeah.
able to read. So yeah, I might be way behind. So maybe the next book chat will be all Tara, and with me like saying, "Here's what I'm currently reading," and then it'll
Yeah.
all be Tara. But that's
Unless
all good.
audiobooks, pick up audiobooks for your drive.
If I'm driving in unfamiliar places, I can't.
Oh, yeah.
I can't. Yeah,
Yeah,
so
that
I
makes
can't do that. So, but hey, you know what? Tara reads a lot of stuff. I mean, this woman is, let me just tell you, I don't know how she does it because she has a life and she reads a lot. So you will have plenty of content coming from us via Tara. So it's all good.
and now I have the excuse to read even more then. I have to.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thanks for joining us, everyone, and happy reading.
Happy reading.